So this is kind of how I interpreted the timeline. I could be right, I could be wrong, but this is just kind of what I understood after going through everything, trying to make sense of how everything would take place in chronological order. So let's get into it. I'm going to split it into 4 parts, with part 1 being about Evan and Clover and how they met, part 2 being about Evan finding the island and trying to decipher the puzzles, then part 3 being about the plan to save Clover, and then let's just say part 4 going into the present day. So I might reference it differently as I go through the timeline, but hopefully it makes sense. So yeah, let's get into it. The story opens up with Clover coming home to his house, only to find a complete stranger inside. Clover then interrogates the stranger, asking him, "What are you doing in my house?" The stranger explains that he doesn't mean any harm and that he's just looking for food. Even though the stranger means no harm, Clover then asks the stranger to please take a seat. The stranger is worried that Clover is going to do something, but Clover just tells the stranger to sit. And surprisingly, the stranger agrees. After Clover interrogates the stranger and has a conversation with him, he then finds out that the stranger's name is Vincent Val. Eventually, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but Clover decides to let Vincent stay. Of course, Vincent's just looking for a place to stay. He's going through something right now, but Clover, being the nice guy that he is, agrees to let him stay in his house for free. So Clover's a pretty cool guy. As time goes on, the two guys become friends, and eventually Vincent reveals that he plays Spy Master and he likes it. And as time goes on, they begin to play Spy Master. Now, of course, Vincent is very good at the game, and he makes bets and makes money off of the game. So he tells Clover that, "Hey dude, I'm not good at the game, so please go easy on me." So Clover agrees, but surprisingly, Clover is absolutely phenomenal at the game and destroys Vincent time and time again. Every time they play, Vincent loses. Like, there's never been a time where Vincent ever won. And Vincent getting so mad, he can't comprehend this. He's supposed to be the greatest, he's supposed to be the best at Spy Master, starts getting mad. But of course, Clover is humble, doesn't gloat in his face, and on a daily basis, they play. Clover goes out in the mornings, helps his community, does what he needs to do, and just goes on with his day. Comes home and beats Vincent at Spy Master. At a later stage in time, Clover comes home to his house fully cleaned and his younger sister put to sleep. Now, while you're probably wondering, Vincent has been so mad that he keeps losing at Spy Master that he took the liberty to clean Clover's entire house and put his younger sister to sleep. Now, unfortunately, during this time as well, it is also revealed that Clover's sister is sick and has an incurable disease that Clover is actually trying to find a way to cure or find medicine for, or just help, because his main existence, or the reason he exists, is for his younger sister, because he wanted to get better even if he died or had to sacrifice himself. The main priority in Clover's life is his sister. So Clover comes home, he finds the house is clean, and he's like, "What's going on here?" And Vincent is just smiling, just like, "Everything's all good, your sister's sleeping, she's listening to her music, she's doing good, man." Because he wants his game of Spy Master. That's how addicted he is, but how mad he is. So eventually Clover just sighs and is like, "Okay dude, I'll give you a rematch, let's go." But during this time, Vincent decides to play one more game of Spy Master, but has a massive bet. If Vincent beats Clover at Spy Master, he gets the entire house to himself and Clover must leave. But Clover claps back with a, hey dude, if I win, you must leave my house, but don't get it twisted. You can come and visit whenever you want, but you must go out and face whatever is happening to you in the world. Because of course, like, Clover can read Vincent like a book and says, I know you're hiding from something and you don't want to face it, and I know you're going through something, but if I beat you, you leave my house, you go back out there and you face it, but you're more than welcome to visit at any time. So Clover, once again, is a nice guy. He's going all out, and it's crazy how kind he actually is. He's like, go and face your issues, because it's to benefit Vincent. But of course, Vincent doesn't see it that way, so they play one more game of Spy Master, and surprise, surprise, Clover absolutely destroys Vincent. After this game, Vincent is furious. He's like, how can it be? Did he see through me this whole time? Are there people better than me but don't want to show it? And he's like, how? You can make so much money with this and you don't care. And eventually, Clover gets very sentimental and philosophical, and he's like, listen dude, the only things that matter to you, or that should matter to you, should be the people in your life who are close to you, and you shouldn't take things for granted. And he was just getting all philosophical, giving him like a life lesson. But of course, Vincent didn't see it that way. And he's like, as long as you honor your part of the bet, you're more than welcome to come back at any time whenever you want. And of course, Vincent's like, yeah, in his head, that's not happening. And then Clover stands up and things go quiet. And then Clover collapses. After Clover had collapsed, it's then revealed that Clover is sick. After Vincent had helped Clover back into his chair, Clover finally reveals that he, too, has an incurable disease like his sister, and his time is running thin. Of course, Vincent is shocked by this, but still, to think that after all this time, Clover let Vincent stay in his home. He's helping his community while actively trying to find a cure to his incurable disease, not only for him, but more importantly, his sister. Of course, Vincent is shocked and he still can't believe it, but Vincent, of course, losing the bet, has to leave. And as Clover now reveals, it's fine because I was going to leave the house in any case, because before the bet, he's like, you can take the house if you win, but I was going to leave anyways. But now Vincent is left. And that is where that part 1 of the timeline closes off. Now we go into part 2. Now, after Vincent has found out about Clover's disease, he then goes back to Clover's village. Now, I'm not too sure if he goes back to the village or he just decides to wander in the village after he's left Clover's home, but I'm not too sure, so I'm just gonna assume he decided to go back. When Vincent goes back to Clover's village, or the place where he stays with the people that Clover has actively been helping, because he cares about his community, as we're now found out, he then speaks to the local people there and asks them, he basically asks them do they have any information on Clover? And they tell him some things here and there, and of course, like I said, he's been very helpful. The old man says ever since Clover knew about his knee, he's been doing the grocery shopping, and other people in the community just show, hey, yeah, no, he's a really nice guy. He's been helping us out for ages. He's a better father than some of the folks here, as the lady had said. So he's really loved. But of course, Vincent reveals to each person, hey, did you know that Clover is sick? And of course, to everyone's surprise, nobody knew. Everyone is just as shocked as Vincent. And eventually, Vincent goes to a little boy and he says, hey, do you know anything about Clover? Since he'd already spoken to the old man and the lady. And the boy goes, yeah, we're best friends. He saw me getting excluded by a game at school and my friends didn't play bliss ball with me. So he taught me Spy Master and we became friends and now we're best friends. And Vincent drops the bombshell to the little boy that Clover is sick. And of course the boy gets upset and he starts yelling at Vincent, "You're a liar. He's my best friend. He would have told me. How do I not know?" But like he was just in such shock, such disbelief that his best friend wouldn't tell him about his disease that's killing him. And then he runs off. After the boy runs off, the grandpa and the other lady come back and they overhear the conversation and they're like, "Wow, we didn't know. We're just as shocked as you, you know. Ever since Clover lost his dad, things have been hard on him. And they're now trying to find ways to make it a bit better. What if we had money? What if we did this?" But they still can't find a way. Because now that everybody knows Clover has a disease and that it's incurable and there's no treatment for it, now everyone's really worried and they want to find a way to save him. Eventually, the boy comes back, overhearing the adults' conversation and says, "You know, there is a legend." And now the grandpa goes, "Bastion, what are you talking about?" That's right, I forgot to mention that the boy's name is Bastion. But the grandpa's like, "What are you saying?" As if like, you know when you say something like that's a myth and your parents are like, "No, don't say that, that's stupid, you're wasting their time." Well, it turns out that the boy, Bastion, is the grandpa's grandson. Yeah, so here we basically find out that they are related. That's pretty cool to see. The boy reveals, or Bastion reveals, that there is an island that grants you eternal life. And of course the grandpa's like, "Stop talking, stop wasting this man's time." And he says it's an island that can grant you eternal life if you can find it. Here's a notebook that I found when I was playing with my friends in some random place, but maybe this could potentially save Clover because I also care about him. And he's like, "He's my best friend, you got that?" And of course the grandpa's like, "Keep quiet." And even though the boy, he says, "I'm young and my mom won't let me go out past 8, but please, can you try find this island so we can save Clover?" And of course the grandpa's like, "Stop wasting this man's time." Vincent agrees. Vincent agrees to go to this mysterious island using the notebook and hopefully he can find it. The villagers then come together and give Vincent resources like food, water and supplies to ensure he has enough food and water and all that to reach the island safely. And the grandpa offers his boat as a way of transportation to get to the island if Vincent can find it. But with no other choice and with this being their only hope to save Clover, Vincent agrees and he leaves immediately. And that's where part 2 of the timeline ends. And now we go into part 3. Now we go into part 3 of the timeline. Vincent surprisingly finds the island, and as he gets to the island, we see that his boat is broken. Despite the dilemma of thinking how is he gonna get home, Vincent still decides to explore the island. As he goes to the island, he finds puzzles and hieroglyphs and starts to decipher them, trying to find out if there's any significant meaning behind them, finding out is there a way to save Clover, is there eternal life. Even though Vincent deciphers the puzzles, he eventually gets a translation, but it doesn't really make sense and he gets frustrated and he starts to cry, and then he has a flashback about the philosophical conversation he had with Clover, and shame man, he just cries because he doesn't want Clover to die, even showing, despite, you know, trying to cheat him at the game and just, you know, being who Vincent is, even he realizes that he actually also cares about Clover and he doesn't want him to die. Unsure of what to do, Vincent calls, I don't know about this, but I assume Vincent calls an ex-colleague that he used to work with at Upbring Labs. Vincent then asks this stranger to come to the island using these coordinates. And the stranger asks if he can bring a friend or must he come alone, and Vincent goes, "You can bring a friend if they're trustworthy," and Vincent agrees. A few hours or so later, the stranger arrives on the island, whose name is revealed to be Andre Ager, an ex-colleague that used to work with Evan at Upbring Labs. As I said, I don't know too much about their history, but They have a whole conversation about Upbring Labs and have a bit of an argument. I don't know too much about it. I assume things went south and Vincent had to run and kind of left Andre in the dust. I don't know too much about that history of them. But now, during their conversation, it's now revealed that Vincent's name is actually Evan Goldstein, who is a genius who had disappeared. And of course, he was on the news, but he's important, he was famous, and I assume he was behind a lot of the inventions at Upbring Labs, and that's how Andre knows him. So now, it's revealed that Vincent's actual name is Evan Goldstein. Now, we don't know why Vincent gave Clover a fake name, but I can assume, as Clover had already discovered, Evan was running from something, so maybe he gave Clover a fake name to keep his identity a secret, because, he was worried to get discovered and get reported, so that could potentially be a part of it. But now we know Vincent is now Evan Goldstein. Evan Goldstein. So after that whole conversation with Upbring Labs and their argument, Evan, wow, that's so interesting. Now his name is Evan. Evan then reveals to Andre that I have a friend, he is sick, and I don't know what to do, and I don't want him to die a miserable death. And, oh my goodness, this is where things get crazy. Andre then comes up with this plan. So, let me break it down, man. Wow, it is a plan and a half, and the fact that it's going to play out the way that it is even more crazy. So, Andre, man, wow. So, after hearing about Evan's dilemma with Clover wanting to save him because there's no cure for his disease and Clover's running out of time, and so is his sister, because Clover's sister is the most important thing to him, Andre comes up with this plan. And oh my goodness, it's I still don't know how he came up with it, but it's so thoroughly constructed. But like, if it doesn't work, things can go so wrong. Okay, so this plan is crazy. The plan is basically to give Clover a let's just say they want to give him, or Andre wants to give him, a happy ending, but this is going to be done by lying to him. The plan is to get Clover to come to this exact island, telling him that this island grants eternal life, which could save him and his sister. The goal is to convince Clover to come here. So Evan must go with the notebook, tell Clover about this mysterious island that grants eternal life, with some puzzles in it he might need to solve, and that there may be a way to save him and his sister, granting them eternal life. Now, they're not going to specify to Clover whether the artifact can be brought back or not, but they just need him to come to this exact island. Then, they're going to hire an actress to play the part of Clover's sister, who, quote-unquote, supposedly survived the disease, and that Clover was the only one sick. So, they want to give him a happy ending. Now, Evan isn't really too fond of this plan because they're kind of selling Clover a lie, and as much as they're lying to him about the artifact and the fake island and the actress and everything, he's like, I don't feel right about this, and Andre goes, oh, okay, I see how it is, it's fine. And then Andre walks and Evan goes, where are you going? And he's like, oh, I'm going to Clover, he's dying, isn't he? We'll just let him die a miserable death. And of course, despite Evan being against this, he then agrees to let the plan carry out. And he says, please, whoever this actress is, and whatever happens, please fill everybody in on the plan. And Andre goes, sure thing. Evan then asks, well, what about the puzzles? What are we gonna do? Oh, no, we'll just redesign them with the portal technology, cut down the translations, and we will use dynamite. And of course, Vincent's like, are you crazy? Or Evan's like, are you crazy? And Andre goes, what's gonna happen? We're in the middle of nowhere. Who's gonna hear us? And that is where part 3 of the timeline ends. I gotta say, it's honestly such a crazy, but such a strategic plan. But if they can pull it off to give Clover a happy ending, then all the power to them. Now we go into part 4 of the timeline. The game now opens up with a white screen showing with text, "My name is Evan. I'm on an island in the Pacific. It's uninhabited." The coordinates are attached to the letter. Send Dysis. Now, with all the information we now know, we know that Dysis is the name of the actress Andre and Upbring Labs has hired. Now, when Vanille arrives on the same island that Evan had arrived on a few days earlier, we see the same boat that Evan came on, but Vanille doesn't pay much attention to it. You think, oh, there's a boat here, could someone already be here? But she doesn't really take it into account, and she starts speaking to Nicola, a scientist from Upbring Labs, and we kind of progress from there. I just find it to be quite interesting that she's not really going, hey Nicola, where did this boat come from? I thought this island was uninhabited, but here we go. But she's just talking to Nicola, and they're just going over the plan, and Vanille needs to find Evan because he could be on this island, and she's just got to keep looking until she finds him. But yeah, I just thought it was quite interesting how it didn't really cross her mind like, wow, whose boat is this? Do you know about this? But let's keep it going. Now, after Vanille speaks to Nicola and they've gone over the plan, she's not as nervous and she's like, okay, I got this. She then starts to explore the island. She solves this first puzzle, and once she solved the puzzle, she then runs into another human being, which surprises her because this island is supposed to be empty, it's supposed to be uninhabited. So to find another human here was a big shock to her. So she begins to interrogate the human that we know as Clover. She doesn't know this at this point in time, but this is Clover. Vanille notices Clover and she's like, finally, Evan! But it's not Evan. As she's trying to get Clover's attention, he's not really listening to her. So she goes, ahem, but he's not listening. She goes, excuse me, he's still not listening. So she goes, ahem, and he's still not listening. She then runs up to him and she screams ahem again, like, hello, I'm right here. And then he finally looks up and goes, yes. And she goes, oh, what is it again? Right, my name is Vanille, which is quite interesting that she hesitated to say her full name, but we now know that she has to keep it a secret. I'm not too sure if I'd mentioned that in the beginning, but she has to keep her name a secret. After introducing herself, Vanille goes, I'm looking for a boy named Evan. Have you seen him or maybe heard of him or something? And Clover thinks to himself, Evan, trying to recall if he's potentially seen this person. She then pronounces his full name and says, Evan Goldstein. And Clover goes, nope, never heard of him. And she thinks to herself, wow, I didn't know that was possible. Clover then continues to write in his notebook and she thinks to herself, what's so interesting about that notebook? And then she goes, well, at least someone is having a good time. And then Clover's just muttering to himself, so if we consider the, perfect. So he's just in his head and he's just, he's so enchanted on the notebook. And then Vanille goes, hey, I'd really appreciate it if you could. But before she can continue a sentence, Clover goes, look, I'd love to help you, but I'm kind of in the middle of something here, so if you'll excuse me. And he just runs off, so he's not really interested in looking for Evan. He's so deep and enchanted in that notebook, that's more important to him. And then she goes, and I'd love to kick you. She then calls Nicola because this was supposed to be an empty island. So then she begins to interrogate Nicola, asking him what is going on here. She then goes, I demand an explanation. You said this island was uninhabited. And he goes, I'm just as surprised as you are. Vanille then says, I thought no one else was supposed to know about this place. And he goes, well, I know as much as you do here, which is pretty much a lie. Let's keep trying to get some information from him. If anyone else is here, they've got to be connected in one way or another. After that conversation, Vanille then explores more of the island. Vanille solves another puzzle and catches up to Clover, but the conversation doesn't really go anywhere. She basically goes, oh, I see you're very focused on your notebook, and he doesn't answer her. She goes, oh, I get it. You're a traveler and you like to draw islands and landscapes, so she's basically mocking him. And then she goes, well, what are you doing here? And she keeps interrogating him, and he goes, what are you doing here? She goes, well, listen, I'm here to look for Evan, and as long as I don't find Evan, I won't leave, nor will I stop asking questions. And he goes, I already told you, never heard of him, I don't have time to be a host, and runs off once again. Vanille then calls Nicholas saying, I think we have the wrong person, and he's like, relax, we've got the right guy, just give it time. And then he goes, next time you run into him, I'll whisper what you should say. So on this next encounter, whatever she's gonna say, Nicola will be whispering in her ear. Vanille catches up to Clover and he goes, for the last time, and then she cuts him off saying, oh no, not this time, buddy. Now you're gonna shut your mouth and I'm gonna speak. Got it? I'm investigating something serious and, how do I put this? You're wasting my time. My name is Vanille and I'm here on behalf of Upbring Labs. We're looking for someone important, a boy named Evan, prodigy boy, missing. Maybe you've heard of him. His name has been everywhere these last few years. Clover goes, well, actually, I'm being honest here. I've never... Shut up, I'm not done yet. A message for help was recently received from an unknown island, which makes you, my friend, a suspect in his disappearance. Just being here on this island means you're involved somehow. If you keep refusing to speak, I will be forced to arrest you. So if you want to keep walking around, writing frantically in that notebook, you better start talking. Clover goes, what? Talking? Yeah, you better start talking. Of course, Clover's still suspicious, but then he finally answers. Vanille, right? Would you mind following me? I want you to see something. What is it? Why don't you come see for yourself? And then Clover runs off as Vanille follows him. After Vanille catches up to Clover, he then explains what he's doing on the island with the notebook and the translations and the monoliths and the artifact, and she's like, oh, I see what you mean. Eventually they have a brief conversation and then they part ways, wishing each other luck on their endeavors. Vanille then calls Nicola back and she's like, so we arrest people, huh? You sounded like a real cop. And he goes, let's just say I'm the jack of all trades. After a conversation between the two of them, she calls it a day, decides to go to sleep, and then we see a portal open, but on the other side of that portal it's nighttime. She steps in and teleports off the island. Vanille wakes up the next morning at sunrise and greets Nicola with a good morning, but doesn't get a response. She then greets him again and still doesn't get a response. She wonders, why isn't my transmitter working? And then realizes, my transmitter, oh no, where is it? She then starts to panic and then she finds a picture of this butterfly looking thing and then realizes it could be Clover. She then teleports onto the island and Clover's just shocked by this portal just opening and she's like, perfect timing, I was looking for you. And she goes, hurry up and get in here, and he goes into the portal. As it fades into the next scene, Clover is just bewildered by this technology. He is fascinated, like he's been living under a rock. He can't believe that he's on the other side of the world because where he was it was nighttime and now it is sunrise. Vanille's still panicking and she's still in her head, but then Clover finally asks her what's going on. She tries to explain something about Evan but doesn't give much context, and she goes, how many times? And Clover's just shocked because, you know, she's panicking and she's like, sorry, I shouldn't have yelled at you. And then she starts to explain the situation. She explains when she woke up a weird picture was left by the window and that her transmitter is also missing. Clover walks up to the picture and he goes, oh, a mayfly. Any idea who could have put that there? And she goes, well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. But Vanille thinks Evan put it there, but Clover can't understand why. While she explains, the key that she used to open up this portal is unique to her and her only. So only she should be able to open up this portal and nobody else to come into this room. But unless you're Evan, who's created this portal technology, only he could be the only one to enter into this very room. She then goes into more of a summary explaining about Evan's been missing and this is why she's come to the island because she got the distress signal, and that she was asked to come to this island and to meet him here for some reason. And then Clover's like, well, you've mentioned Upbring Labs for the second time, who are they? And she's like, oh no, they're just a development firm and all of that. She then starts to like panic again. She's like, what if someone else is here? What if they want to hurt me? And she's just back in her head again, just panicking. Clover's also quite suspicious of this because she's like, didn't you like ask them for any details? And she's like, well, I tried, but they're not the conversational type. Clover then proposes that the two work together. He's looking for the artifact and he's trying to decipher the monoliths, and she likes to solve them, but she's also looking for Evan. So maybe they could like stick together and try help each other solve these puzzles and look for Evan. And she's hesitant, but she agrees and she's like, but you must walk in front. Clover agrees. He then walks off to the side of the room and he's like, oh right, there's no door. And she's like, yeah, sorry about that. I'll let you out and I'll catch up to you, just let me get changed. So she gets changed and then goes to the island and catches up to Clover. Vanille then mentions the artifact again and she says, well, you said you wanted this for someone else, could you elaborate on that? Clover explains it's for his little sister. And Vanille goes, what happened to her? Let's just say her health. She's not in the best condition. She doesn't have much time left. And Vanille doesn't know what to say, but she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I had no idea. Vanille then says, well, what is your sister's name? And Clover reveals his sister's name to be Dysis, which is insane because the actress's name is also named Dysis, and this absolutely stuns her. And she's just shocked for a few minutes and doesn't know what to say. And she's like, oh, I thought I heard Dysis. That's what I said. And she's even more shocked. And Clover goes, I know it's a weird name. And she goes, yeah, bizarre. When Vanille hears that she's got the same name as Clover's sister, she's just shocked and she doesn't know what to say. And Clover's like, are you okay? And she's like, oh no, I'll catch up to you. Because now having her name mentioned, she's more involved in this. After solving another puzzle, she catches up to Clover and she asks him a question about the island, about people being immortal, and he's not listening to her. As she's about to ask another question, a mysterious shadowy figure just runs across the beach. Vanille then tells Clover that someone had just touched her because someone had just run past on screen. Of course, Clover dismisses this and is like, listen, the island isn't completely empty, there is wildlife. But Vanille is certain that she knows it was a person. Clover asks if she was able to see the person's face before they ran off. Vanille didn't see his face, but is certain it was definitely a human being. After solving a few more puzzles, Vanille suggests that they take a break, because if Clover and herself continue to push themselves, they're gonna make more mistakes, and what takes 1 hour takes 3, and she just basically wants to take a break. And Clover, kind of against the idea, he agrees. They then sit down and have some tea, and Clover begins to interrogate Vanille, because she's been speaking a lot about Upbring Labs, but she hasn't really explained who she is. Clover then mentions Upbring Labs and says you've been talking about it in Evan, and he's like, who are you exactly? Are you some secret agent? And she's like, listen, I'm just here because I'm here for the money, because they offered me a ton of money, and you know, maybe if the money was right I would hurt anyone. It doesn't matter, I will do anything for money. And she's like, I know I sound awful, but that's just me. Clover then gives her a whole philosophical speech and is like, listen, just don't forget those who are important to you, your loved ones and the people who are close to you. And she's like, wow, somehow you made me feel worse than how I am already. Vanille then goes, you know what? You sound like an old man on his deathbed. And Clover just goes quiet for a few moments and just smiles and goes, You know what, Vanille? You're completely right. Their break ends and they continue to explore more of the island. Vanille then solves another puzzle and then encounters a shadowy figure that she thinks is Clover. She then begins to theorize about everything that's going on with Upbring Labs on the island and what could be happening, but the figure doesn't answer her at first, and then starts speaking about how gorgeous the scenery is and how beautiful the island is. And she then realizes this isn't Clover. The shadowy figure then goes, "Soon our time to talk will come, Dysis," and uses her real name. Even though Vanille wasn't able to see his face as he runs off into the nighttime, she still recognizes the voice from somewhere. After the encounter with the shadowy figure that we now know is Andre, Vanille finally catches up to Clover, and it's Clover this time, and she goes, "Just to check, you didn't play a prank on me earlier?" And Clover goes, "What are you talking about?" And she goes, "Oh no, he's too straight-laced, he must be serious, so who I spoke to earlier or who was talking to me earlier must have not have been Clover." And then she goes, "You know what? Never mind. I must be seeing things, I must be tired." And he goes, And she goes, "You know what? Maybe we should call it a night. I'm kind of tired." And he goes, "Okay, I just want to solve 2 more monoliths." She's annoyed, but she agrees and says, "We can do 2, but 2 more only." So they go and they solve the last 2 monoliths for the day before they call it in. After solving the 2 final monoliths, Clover goes, "You know what? That's enough for today." I think I speak for both of us when I say I could collapse at any second. And maybe the fatigue and, maybe our minds started playing tricks on us. And Vanille goes, "I hope you're not making fun of me or you're gonna sleep outside tonight." And Clover goes, "That's the plan. I never go on an adventure without my sleeping bag." Vanille then opens up the portal and he just stands there staring at her. And he goes, "What's the matter? Are you feeling pity for me?" And she just scoffs and goes, "You wish." And he's like, "Just, I'm feeling compassionate today." And he goes, "Lucky me." She then asks him, "Are you coming?" She doesn't have all night. Clover runs to the portal and they go to sleep. Vanille wakes up in the middle of the night, gets out of bed, and just stands in the middle of the room. Clover wakes up in a daze and says he just can't get used to the abrupt change of daylight. Clover then asks Vanille what is wrong. She says she can't find her pillow, which is interesting because considering they're in a room that's sealed with no exit or entrance, no one should be able to get in there. Because once again, she's the only one with the ID to the room, but I think either Andre or Evan took the pillow. Anyways, Clover's like, "You know what, Vanille, just take my pillow. Besides, I never use it anyway," and Vanille thanks him. Vanille then says, "I'm going to the bathroom." And Clover asks, "Well, what's stopping you?" And he's like, "You gotta be kidding me. There's no bathroom here?" And Vanille goes, "Surprisingly not. You think with this advanced, warping portal technology, you think there would be a bathroom in a room like this, but there isn't." So, she opens up the teleporter and she teleports to the island. But upon landing on the island, she then sees the mysterious shadowy figure once again and says, "No, not this time," and instantly teleports him back to the room. The stranger is just overwhelmed and so surprised by the technology, and he's like, "Wow, I've never seen technology like this before." But Vanille isn't wasting any time, and she says to the stranger, "You're not going anywhere until you spill the beans. I want to know exactly what's going on and why are you here?" Clover then wakes up hearing the commotion and says, "Who's your friend?" And Vanille goes, "Clover, I think we found our monkey." And the stranger goes, "Listen, I'm not that bad looking." As Vanille begins to interrogate him, he just starts singing random song lyrics. He's basically pretending he's listening to music so that he doesn't have to interact with them. But these lyrics, they could mean anything, but I recognize these lyrics from Sonic R, so I'm just gonna go with that. Now, Vanille and Clover begin to press the stranger with more questions, and he goes, "Listen, before I can explain myself, please can I have some space?" Clover walks across the room and gives the stranger a bit of space. He then explains his name is Andre Ager, so he has finally revealed his true identity to Clover and Vanille. Of course, we know his name already, but to Vanille and Clover, this is new. He then goes, hey, I'm an explorer, and they ask him, how did you find the island? It's supposed to be a secret. And he goes, oh, I found it using the translator notebook. I was fortunate to touch it with my 2 hands. Clover, shocked by this, asks him, do you have one of the notebooks? Andre goes, I wish. And the only reason I know about it is because my friend had a notebook, aka Evan, and I took pictures of it. And it was enough to find the island and translate the monoliths to decipher the messages. Andre then goes, that's what must have brought you here. And Vanille goes, we're actually in the middle of doing that actually. And Andre goes, oh sweet, well I've already solved the puzzle. And Clover goes, what? Because now he's panicking because he's scared someone else is going to take the artifact before he can get to it. He says once he learned what the artifact was, he lost interest because it wasn't as exciting as he thought it was going to be. And Clover goes, well, what do you mean? And Andre's like, it just wasn't what he was expecting. You know, it didn't really meet his expectations. Clover then asks, what is the artifact? And Andre goes, listen dude, you're gonna have to figure it out for yourself. I don't want to ruin the surprise. And that you're gonna have to figure it out for yourself. And Clover stutters asking, is it real? And Andre goes, it's as real as you and me. Vanille then cuts in and says, but were you not following us? And Andre goes, oh no, I'll do everything I can to avoid people. And then she goes, why did you run away from me earlier? And she's like, listen, I was doing everything in my power not to cross paths with you. You've noticed I'm not good with people. Vanille then mentions, but earlier you mentioned and said, our time will come to meet again. And Andre plays it off as, what are you talking about? I don't remember that. That must have been someone else. Vanille then debates this in her head and she's like, maybe that could have been someone else, but she's not buying it. Andre then goes, you know when you're trying to look up an excuse to kind of leave, but you don't know how to say it. So Andre is basically saying he wants to leave. Clover tells Vanille to let him go, even though she doesn't want to because she doesn't have any proof and can't prove it's, you know, everything Andre says it is. She can't really disapprove anything he said thus far because she has no evidence. So she ultimately agrees to let him go. And she apologizes. Before she does that, she asks Andre, does she know Evan? And he goes, I know Evan, the world-renowned genius, you know, but if you mean personally, then no. Clover then suggests showing him a photo of Evan. So Vanille should just take a photo out and show him what it looks like because it would have made their conversation easier to start with. She goes, that's a good idea, but when she looks for the photo, she's like, it's not here, I swear I had it, forget it. Andre then says, before I go, can I please have some water? And Clover offers his. Andre drinks some of Clover's water, but he's like, it tastes gross, and I knew it's too good to be true, you guys are bullying me like my old friends. And Clover's like, relax, you've got it all wrong. And he just drinks the water, and Vanille goes, is it okay? And he's like, it's just water. And Vanille goes, I want to try it. Clover hands Andre the bottle. He just turns around and just drops it. He apologizes and Clover says it's okay, and Andre goes, you shouldn't drink water like that, it'll make you sick. He then says, anyways, I'm out of here. He just walks away, just like that running gag with Clover earlier on. He realizes, right, there's no doors. Vanille apologizes and lets him go. And once they're back on the island, she asks him, are you gonna be okay? And he goes, yeah, I'll be fine. And they say their final goodbyes to Andre. Clover then apologizes about the photo because if Clover got to see what Evan looked like, maybe he would have recognized him. Vanille then goes, oh no, it's all good. Because Evan took it. And Clover's surprised. She then references the time that shadowy figure ran across the island and took it. She says he took it. We know Andre has it, but she knows Andre took the photo to stop Vanille from showing Clover what Evan looked like. Vanille then mentions Vincent and asks Clover to describe what he looked like. As Clover is describing Vincent, Vanille mentions his pink eye. And Clover, shocked by this, says, "You're creeping me out." And Vanille then says, "Clover, you must have been friends with Evan without even realizing it. Andre took the photo so that you couldn't see it." But they're still confused. Why would they go through all that trouble just to do this? And Clover's like, "Vanille, do you already know what's going on here? Because this is very suspicious." And she's like, "I don't know entirely," but she's trying to process everything and put it all together. Vanille then wants Clover to explain, how did you meet Vincent? But Clover's like, "Listen, I know finding Evan is your main priority right now, but with Andre solving the puzzle and Upbring Labs and everything happening, I need to get to this artifact as soon as possible. They need to save his sister before it's too late, and there's not enough time to sit and play catch up." So she's like, "I'm sorry, let's continue." And he's like, "Thank you." And they continue their journey through the island. After Vanille solves her final two puzzles, she then catches up with Clover, who is standing in a valley full of flowers. Clover then states, "That's it, the last one." Vanille asks Clover, "What does it say?" But before Clover can explain anything, he then tells a story about him and an old friend. Clover had an old friend named Lucas, who was just 1 year older than him. They used to play back at the park in Clover's hometown. Every time Clover's mother made him breakfast, he would eat as quickly as possible just to get to the park so he could play with Lucas, who was always there waiting for him. But no matter how early Clover got up, Lucas would always be there before him. He even asked Lucas if he slept there. Lucas also had a toy plane that Clover absolutely adored, but he never let him touch it, and it made Clover mad. One day, Clover went to the park and Lucas wasn't there. He was finally happy because he was the first one to the park and he beat Lucas. Clover sat and waited for hours, but hours passed and Lucas didn't show up. When he came home, he had found out that Lucas had moved. Later during that night, Clover's father heard him crying, came into his room and asked him what was wrong because he was concerned. Clover explained the situation about Lucas moving, and his father explained everything to him, just hoping he wouldn't worry too much because he understood how close Clover was with Lucas. A day later, Clover's father had told him there was a package that had come in the mail for him. Clover was confused, but he saw it was from Lucas. Lucas had sent Clover an apology letter for saying, "I'm sorry I couldn't say goodbye, and that I will miss you and I'll never forget you." In that package as well was also a gift box, and inside the gift box was Lucas's red plane. One day, Clover was playing around in his father's office and stumbled upon the box for the toy plane. Clover realized his father made the whole thing up, but Clover kept quiet. He never found out how his father knew he loved that toy plane so much, but he was never able to ask him, and Vanille asks why. Clover's father had died of a strange disease years later. His father said to him, "If you want to be happy, make your loved ones happy." And this is also where we kind of see where Clover gets his philosophy and all his life advice from, because he learned a lot from his father. He then explains later on his mom left him and his sister because she was extremely worried and distraught about the disease, even though it wasn't contagious. But, unfortunately, this is another big reveal. Clover reveals the disease is hereditary, which means him and his sister have inherited the disease. Dysis, that I'm going to be referring to going forward, says in her head, "You too, Clover?" He explains he has a few weeks left, or even a few days left, and unfortunately, the disease progresses much more aggressively in women. Clover then reveals the final, fully translated message. The message translates saying the island is the artifact. Those who set foot on this island shall be made immortal. Now, that's great news that they've discovered what the translation means and that the artifact is real, but it's the island. And the sad thing is, Clover realizes he's gonna have to bring Dysis to the island to keep her alive. And that's great because she won't die. But what life is that? Stuck on an island, isolated from society. It's not a nice life to live. And Dysis goes, listen, we can find another way. And Clover, disappointed by learning the truth, he just asks for some space and he just wants some time alone to process this, because he was so hell-bent on finding this island and finding the artifact for his sister to save her, because she's the most important thing to him. His hope was that he can take the artifact back to her and save her, but now the artifact is the island. It's kind of like he's done it all for nothing and he's just trying to process everything. Dysis then takes time to process the information. Then Andre comes out of nowhere and just starts speaking about how beautiful the flowers are and the island's incredible and he loves the view. And Vanille asks him, what are you doing here? Andre then goes, it's a shame about Clover's disease. And goes, but what if I told you there's something we can do about it? And turns into the shadowy figure once again. Vanille then recognizes the voice saying, it was you! Upbring Labs isn't behind this. It's you. You're the one who contacted me. Andre's like, yes I did. And wasn't it fun? You see, Vanille, or Dysis, like mysteries in real life, they're very dull and they're boring. They're not like books or movies or anything fictional. That's why I wanted to take all of this to the next level. I've been behind everything and I put all the pieces in place so that you could figure it out for yourself. You and you only. Evan was gonna make it easy from the start, but I disagreed. I kind of wanted to mix things up here and there, because you see, emotions can't be faked. They have to be authentic. They have to be lived. Because Andre wants this whole situation to unfold as realistically and as emotionally as possible. He was about to explain something to Vanille, because he's like, we were fortunate to find someone with the... And he doesn't finish. I assume he means he was able to find her because she's got the same name as Clover's sister. But he didn't finish the sentence, so I can only assume that. Vanille is still confused and asks, what's going on? But Andre still expects her to put all the pieces together and admits, I didn't give you all the answers, but you won't need them. And then Andre drops one more piece of information and he's like, well, you were right about everything from the start, from the monoliths to the puzzles, you were right. Andre says, you know, Clover, he was dying and Evan just wanted to leave him with a gift that could give Clover what he wanted the most, which was the island, which would save his sister using the artifact, because saving his sister was the most important thing to Clover. Dysis finally puts all the pieces together and begins to have flashbacks saying no, 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 and Andre goes, are you still wondering what you're doing here? Basically saying, you know what's going on, time to end it. And the scene fades to black. Oh my goodness. Just going over this again and reading it properly, it's just, it's getting crazy. But now we go into the final scene. Dysis is now in her head. She doesn't know if this is the right or wrong thing to do, but she doesn't even know what's right or wrong anymore. But she ultimately makes a decision. She then approaches Clover and says, I've got something important to tell you. Clover says, I'm listening. Dysis then goes, my name isn't Vanille, it's actually Dysis Emo. Clover says, this isn't the time for jokes, but Dysis says, just shut up and listen. She then says, ever since I came to this island, but doesn't finish the sentence and bursts into tears. She states this is all too much and I can't do this anymore. Clover runs over to her, comforts her, and says, listen, everything is going to be fine. Dysis goes, why do bad things happen to good people? And Clover goes, the universe has a plan for all of us. Even in his final moments, he's still positive and he's just still giving that amazing life advice. He then goes, if I wasn't sick, we wouldn't have met. And Dysis goes, but why didn't you tell me? Clover says, I didn't want my disease to mark me. I didn't want to be treated different because of it. Dysis says, I wouldn't treat you any differently. And Clover goes, well, you're doing it right now. Clover tells her to breathe and says, calm down, just breathe. What did you want to tell me? And this is when Dysis explains everything. Dysis then calms down and explains everything. She says, ever since I arrived on the island, I couldn't get the coincidence out of my head, but I understand everything now. The island isn't making us immortal, but it's rather frozen in time. Clover asks, what is the difference? Dysis says, well, you arrived here on the island before I did, so time stopped for you before it also stopped for me. You left home to come here when your sister was a baby, but time went normally for me until I grew up and came here. That's why we're meeting each other now. She says it's a lot to take in, but Clover, I am your sister. But Clover is still in disbelief. Dysis says, when I took the job, I was given a fake name and I was told not to reveal it from the very beginning because of how crazy it sounded. Clover says, your name is Dysis Imor. He then asks Dysis, but how? How did you recover? Dysis goes, Clover, you were the only one who was sick. I was fine this whole time. When Evan gave you that notebook to come to the island, he stayed and looked after me. Clover's like, well, yeah, of course he looked after you. I asked him to, but that was pretty much a day ago. Dysis goes, no, it was years ago, and you never returned. Time doesn't pass on the island. That's why our watches stopped. That's why it's frozen in time. Evan thought you must have died, and with no choice, he looked after me. He thought it wouldn't last long. I imagine he realized I wasn't sick, so he found me a family to stay with. Until this very day, I never knew I had a brother. I never knew where I came from. Evan contacted me pretending to be Upbring Labs and sent me here with the excuse to look for him so that we would meet. The only thing I was told to do was hide my name to avoid ruining the surprise, otherwise things wouldn't happen the way it did. They wanted us to discover all of this by ourselves. Clover then questions her again, saying, What are you saying? And he goes, can I trust you? And she goes, just look at me, Clover, it's me. Clover starts to let it all sink in. He can't believe it, but he starts to realize it's actually her, and he walks towards her, and he starts to cry. He asks if it's really her, and that, wow, she's been in front of him this whole time. Dysis cries even more and says, yes, Clover, it's me. Clover's like, wow, you've grown so much. Can I give you a hug? And she goes, of course you can, you idiot. He's like, I was so scared of losing you. Ever since we lost mom and dad, I only had you. You being alive was the only thing I wanted. Are you staying healthy? Tell me about your friends. Do they take care of you? Has it been years? I have so many questions. Whatever happened to Evan, and why did he use a different name with me? Dysis says he used a fake name to hide from the rest of the world, but it was a part of the plan to surprise us. He did it for us. Clover goes, wow, I guess he wasn't selfish after all. Clover asks, but why are you crying? Are you sad? Because you're seeing me after all these years. I should be the one upset. Why are you crying? She's like, oh no, I'm just happy. Clover goes, I don't want this moment to end, and utters a very deep line. I'm so happy I could die right now. Everything will be better from here on out. I'll have to stay here if I don't want my time to come, he says jokingly. And Clover says, you better come and visit. And he starts to go quiet. Dysis calls Clover's name in confusion, and he says, "Don't worry, I'm just a little dizzy," and Clover just collapses. We then go to Vanille, who's inside a dark room, saying she can't remember how she got there and her head hurts. The last thing she remembers is doing the whole act in front of Clover, and remembers Clover. She then walks out of the room, and we see a very similar surrounding to Clover's village, but the camera slowly pans to the right. We then see the gravestones of Dysis and Clover, showing that they unfortunately did not make it to the end. And that is where our timeline of Evan's remains comes to an end. And that is where the timeline ends. This was a lot of fun, but took up a lot of time to put together. It was very fascinating to come back to this game and construct a chronological timeline to try and make sense of everything. And it really was interesting to see how the game originally put you in the present and the past and present and the past, but then coming back to see how the past influences the future and how everything just came full circle and came together. One thing I did notice was how when Clover's father got him that red toy plane and said it was from Lucas, even though Clover didn't know how his father knew he loved that toy plane, he never got to ask him because his father passed away. But Clover said, if you want to be happy, make your loved ones happy. And that's where he gets his philosophy from his father, because even though the father died and he never got to ask him about the toy plane, the father died thinking Clover was happy and he got the toy plane, even though Clover found out. This is interesting to me because it's very similar to how Clover went out, to how Evan wanted to save him and do everything, and even though Andre's plan was a bit twisted, he wanted the best for Clover as well, even if it was a bit of a messed up plan. But it's just interesting how when Clover's father died, he died thinking that Clover was happy and he got the toy plane, even though Clover found out, similar to how Clover doesn't know the artifact isn't real, but they're giving him this false hope. Well, it is false hope, unfortunately, but they're giving him this hope of he can save his sister, and even though the artifact wasn't real and it didn't work, he died believing his sister survived all these years, and even though, unfortunately, his sister didn't make it, he got to spend his last few hours with who he thought was his sister, so he died happy. So that was quite a nice way of bringing everything full circle, similar to how his father went out, is similar to how he went out. And it's just crazy to think how a whole research facility just came up with this plan. Yes, I know Andre was behind it, but like just setting up the magnetic field and stopping the watches and the actress, it was insane. As I said, I originally found this game back in 2019, 2020, back when, you know, mobile game ads were still tamed but were getting out of hand. I saw this as a mobile game ad and I'm like, hey, this looks pretty cool. And then I got it on Xbox and I played it for like 10-20 minutes, but I'm like, I'm not much of a puzzle guy and I didn't really follow the story and I kind of left it. But I'm glad I came back to it, got it on Steam and decided to give it another shot, because this was definitely worth it. I really enjoyed it. There's so much I unpacked just to like put the timeline together, and it was quite interesting. And just seeing how Andre had it planned out from the beginning to taking the photo on the beach and just everything. Even when they were back in the room when he's like, this water tastes awful, but doesn't pass it to Vanille and just drops the bottle to stop her from finding out. Because I think, like I said, I thought Clover was poisoned to kill him quicker, but Andre didn't want Dysis to know what was in that water, because she would be like, this isn't water, this is medicine. and then she'd get suspicious and it would ruin the plan. So yeah, but it was a very fun game altogether, and I hope to find more like these in the future, story and 8-bits. I obviously was gonna play other 8-bit games, but I got caught there for a second. Yeah. I was gonna do other ones, but Evans Remains took my attention and it kept me till the very end, but I don't regret it because I had lots of fun. But thank you so much for watching. I'm sure there's a lot I've probably missed, and maybe I might make a second video to come and revise on this timeline in the future, or maybe I might pick up on something, or maybe I might add more context here. But this was a lot of fun to make, and I hope you enjoyed. But it's time to go back to the hospital. It's time to save lives and go back to sleepless nights. I'm excited. That's right, I think you know what we're going after this, but we'll see soon enough. This game was lots of fun. Let alone it was an emotional roller coaster, but I really loved it nonetheless. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Rest in peace, Dysis. Rest in peace, Clover.